We'll take this one, the Brown Eye. Definitely take the Dirty Shirley. Take this looper. I was really excited to see this in the used case. I've actually wanted a Foxx Tone Machine for a very long time. It just feels really rich and organic and chewy, and it's always inspiring. And sometimes fuzzes have that sound, but they're kind of just flat. This feels three-dimensional. So here we have basically a copy of my Saturday Night Live rig, which is essentially a lot of classic tones with a little bit of some fun. Nothing too crazy. For SNL, it's very wah focused. I mean, the intro to the show is I gotta use a lot of wah. So I play stuff like this. It's really just octave kind of disco stuff. So that kind of thing. Sometimes I use it. There's a riff like this. So that kind of thing, a lot of funk soul kind of vibe. On occasion, I might use it with some weird sounds and do some, I don't know, let's see, like some weird effecty type of things, maybe like, you know, like your standard kind of fun things to do with a wah that's not waka 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 waka. Next, we have an overdrive. Depending on your rig and your amp, so at the show I have a 2-channel amp head, so I typically use my first overdrive from the amp, but we didn't have that. So if you're just using one amp that's just one sound, you get it from pedals. So even on my board at SNL, I still have the pedals to be able to do that. Here we have like a drive section. So there's my little low gain, little overdrive thing, and here's more of the high gain, kind of rock and roll, full out sound. I typically have it depends on what amp I'm using. Those things sometimes change. If I'm using a 1-channel amp that's just clean, I'll typically run the low gain setting as more of a little drive kind of tubey thing, maybe so here's clean. So, and then I'll kick this on. So I wouldn't really play funk, but it would be more. So it's, you still get a lot of note, but there's a little bit of grit. So if maybe it's more of a blues thing. So it's clear, has a little, grittiness that's not just clean. So then the next is the kind of rock and roll thing. This is for the rock out stuff. And then obviously if you put them together, you can kind of stack them, and then you get maybe your solo tone or your mega rock. In my rig, I have the BB Plus, the exotic. So it's actually the BB, but with an extra drive option. So I kind of set those to have a little more variety in case I need it. But typically, I just use one side, so it's essentially the same as just having one BB preamp. I like this because it's kind of got that early Marshall rock sound where it's not modern gain, but it's kind of in that Zeppelin, AC/DC, Eric Clapton, Blues Breakers, Cream world. So it's drivey, but it's not insane. It's not like super chunky in terms of like gobs of distortion. So it's still clear, which is why I like to have something like a Tube Screamer-esque type pedal, which the Keeley Super Phat is kind of in that vein. It's similar, but it just has the Phat mod. When you put them together, you get that really nice, you get that extra gain that you might want for the solo. But the Phat mod, the Super Phat mod Keeley, I really like this because it just stays really nice and warm and thick when you're adding a little drive. A lot of times, low gain pedals can lose some low end, and I really like that this doesn't. Actually, you can gain some fatness even, which is nice when you want to play some leads or something like that. So, you know, the difference being you still get a lot of thickness from the note, which is good. Yeah, so then we go basically into our modulation stuff, time-based effects. This is more to taste as you like, you know, what kind of effects you like, you can use. I like the univibe type of thing to do more of like a Hendrix thing every once in a while. I actually use my chorus as more of a faux Leslie. So I do tend to keep my vibe slower for the most part, and then my chorus is fast. So, and I typically tend to use them with distortion. So it'll sound like this. So this is the vibe. But then, you know, bring in kind of the Hendrix stuff and maybe some delay. And you got. So that's totally your Hendrix vibe, which we, you know, when we rock out, and we actually do cover some Hendrix songs, so it's perfect for that. And then for the chorus, so put on the super Phat mod in the chorus, and I kind of do the. So that's kind of how I use that. And then obviously if you need to go to normal chorus land, which sometimes we do for a monologue or something, you just change up, and there you go. And there's your normal chorus. Next, we have our tremolo. This is something I don't use a lot on the show, but every once in a while we need it. And a lot of times we need fast, actually. So we do this thing that's kind of. So kind of we just. Yeah, and then if you want slow, chill vibes, you know, then you can kind of get the reverb tremolo situation. If you're doing some. that sultry thing. Next I go reverb first, then I go delay. My philosophy on the reverb before delay or delay before reverb situation is I don't want my repeats to be verbed out. So I go reverb first and then delay after that. So that's just the way I do it. And I go for a spring reverb type of thing just to kind of get that Fender reverb. And obviously, I can turn around and put that on, but on the show, my amp is, not really that close to me, so it's not always easy. And when you're going other places and you have your board, you need to be able to use a reverb. So I use this. So it's kind of like not too crazy of a setting. It's just kind of there, like when you're doing a little like. That's kind of how I set it. I also do tend to use it a little bit on some lead stuff. So. Just gives it some nice fullness. The reason that I went to the Topanga Spring Reverb kind of more than anything else, because it was probably the most simple and clean kind of just spring reverb pedal that was out there, I think that I at least saw first. I know that the Cattle and Bread delays are really great, and I've actually never used the Topanga before, but it sounds great. It's totally in that Fender spring reverb thing, and like that's what you want. There it is, right there. Next, we have our delays. I set the Echo Rec for more of a, not ambient, because I can never be too ambient on the show, but we definitely use that for more of a clean, spatial thing. And then the Bell Epoch was more of a, for leads with distortion, so I have them set differently. So this could be a vibe of how I set this. Right, so that's that vibe, and then for leads, it's like, so you don't really hear it when you're playing, but it's there. The reason I feel it's important to have that where it's not so much heard, it's more of a feel thing. Sometimes you want this little sustain or this kind of extra schmutz that just goes on the end of the note so it doesn't feel so dry. Sometimes I play bone dry, if I'm just like, especially if I'm doing something funky. So I would not use a delay for that. But if I'm soloing, I want a little extra wiggle room, a little vibe. So, it just adds this little extra tail of musical goodness. Lastly, we have a boost pedal. Right now, if you're playing by yourself, you don't need a boost pedal, but when you're playing in a band with loud drummers and loud bass and tons of horns and all these things, you gotta cut through. You take a solo, you gotta be able to blast your volume. So these you can set one knob. This is the JHS. It's super easy. The Prestige Boost, you gotta turn one knob. That's it. Doesn't get much more easier than that. So, and that's not even halfway. Now it's halfway. Let's go 75%. And now full. So these are the pedals that I chose from Guitar Center that I think most represent what I use on the show. Some of them I actually do use on the show. The amp that I chose for the SNL rig is the Deluxe Reverb. I go for a clean, black bass type of Fender sound so you can get that kind of robust but also spanky funk thing, clean, just guitar playing, and takes pedals really well. That's kind of why I have a little light overdrive pedal and a more gained overdrive for solos in case you don't have a 2-channel amp. So this way you kind of get, your rock thing, you're clean, you're in between, you can kind of hit all the bases with this type of rig.